The ocean was calm that morning, too calm. Jessica Radcliffe, an experienced wildlife videographer, had filmed whales for years, but nothing prepared her for the moment the water around her kayak darkened with a shadow so massive, it blotted out the sun. She raised her camera, thinking it would be the shot of her career. What happened next would be replayed across the world and whispered about on every boating dock from Alaska to New Zealand. This wasn't just another whale encounter. This was the day an orca chose Jessica, and not for a friendly reason. Jessica Radcliffe wasn't afraid of the ocean, at least, not anymore. She had been sailing since she was a teenager, working alongside her father on research trips. At 32, she had a respectable career in wildlife videography. Her documentary work had taken her to the frigid Arctic, the turquoise waters of the Maldives, and the gray, misty coasts of the Pacific Northwest. But this trip was personal. She had recently lost her father to cancer, and filming orcas off the coast of Vancouver Island had been their shared dream. This time, she was going without him. Alone. Just her camera, and the open water. The day began peacefully. The sun was rising over the horizon, spilling gold across the rippling surface. Gulls cried overhead, and the faint smell of salt and seaweed carried on the breeze. Jessica paddled her kayak quietly, her camera mounted on a waterproof rig at the bow. The water was glassy smooth, so smooth, it almost felt like she was gliding through a mirror. Then, the silence broke. A distant whoosh, a sound like an enormous exhale, echoed across the bay. Jessica froze mid-paddle. She knew that sound. Orca. Her heart quickened. Slowly, she turned toward the noise, scanning the water. She saw the first dorsal fin, a towering black blade slicing the surface. Then another, smaller one. A pod. Her excitement surged. She began filming, zooming in as the orcas moved closer, their sleek bodies glistening as they broke the surface. She whispered into her microphone, narrating every movement, her voice trembling from the thrill. But something about their behavior was different. They weren't traveling in a straight line. They were circling. Jessica's grip tightened on her paddle. The largest orca, a male with a dorsal fin taller than she was, glided directly toward her kayak. She could feel the power in every movement of his body, like an underwater freight train. Still, she kept filming, convinced this was the moment that would make her career. Then the water around her began to churn. The first bump was gentle, almost playful. The kayak rocked, but Jessica steadied herself. The second bump was harder, knocking her camera slightly askew. She looked down and saw the massive white and black head pass directly beneath her, the orca's eye fixed on her in a way that made her chest tighten. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was intent. Her mind flashed back to the countless safety briefings she'd sat through. Orcas are intelligent, calculated hunters. Respect their space. But this one wasn't keeping its distance. She dipped her paddle into the water, trying to steer toward the nearest boat, a whale-watching vessel about 200 meters away. But the orca intercepted, cutting across her path. Then another surfaced to her right, its dorsal fin slicing past with alarming speed. Her breathing grew rapid. She kept filming, though, part of her terrified, part of her unable to stop. The large male dove deep, disappearing from sight. The water fell eerily still. Jessica's hands shook. She scanned the surface, waiting. Then, impact. The kayak jolted violently upward as the orca rammed from beneath, sending her sprawling forward. The camera slipped, dangling by its tether. Salt water sprayed her face as she gasped, clinging to the sides of the boat. She heard her own ragged breathing on the video feed, punctuated by the sound of water crashing back into the sea. Another shadow rose beside her, a second orca, smaller but equally fast. It brushed the kayak, turning it sideways. From the whale-watching boat, shouts carried across the water. Someone waved their arms, motioning for her to paddle toward them. But Jessica couldn't, she was boxed in. The orcas had formed a half-circle around her, surfacing one by one. The male came up last, right beside her, so close she could have touched him. His massive head lifted slightly, and their eyes locked. In that unblinking stare, she felt something more than animal instinct, something like a decision being made. Then, with a sudden flick of his tail, he dove again. The turbulence sent her kayak spinning. She tried to regain balance, but the rope tether on her camera snagged. In fumbling to free it, she dropped her paddle. The orca surfaced directly in front of her, mouth parting just enough to show a flash of teeth. And that's when she realized, this encounter wasn't over. It was only beginning.